Hey everyone, it's Zack Beck. Hindsight is the easiest way to assess great investment opportunities. We look at stocks like Amazon, Apple, Tesla, and perhaps even Bitcoin and think to ourselves, man, if I had just invested in that stock earlier before it began to peak, then I'd be rich right now. And the downside with having that type of mentality is we might find ourselves getting caught up in the moment and investing in stocks when they're riding high. For example, if you might have got caught up in the GameStop saga, perhaps you invested when shares were reaching $450, only to find that those shares plummeted back to $50 right now, losing almost $400 per share in the matter of a couple of days. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're going and actually investing in the companies when they're peaking instead of getting them when they're low, what I want to encourage you to do is to reverse engineer the way that you think and specifically share with you the steps that I take to identify stocks right now that have great investment potential so they can actually yield a return that will help you or myself achieve our long-term financial goals. So let's take our time, dive into the details, and jump into it right now. As it relates to finding investment opportunities that have great upside potential, I believe it's important for us to understand how companies actually are valued and how that can affect their stock price. For example, right now, if you were to want to invest in Apple, Apple is a company that has a market capitalization of $2.2 trillion. That is basically how much Apple is worth at this present moment. Therefore, in order for Apple to quadruple and actually produce the types of returns that could be life-changing for yourself, it would have to reach almost a $10 trillion company. Now, considering some of their potential investments, you might see that happening. They're considering the Apple car and other things that might actually do that for them. However, the likelihood of a company quadrupling, it really needs to have a lower capitalization rate in order to have that type of upside potential, because right now a company like that is so large, it's difficult to do those kinds of gains. So in understanding that, you want to look at companies that aren't necessarily at such a high market capitalization right now or are not worth nearly as much, so that way they have more room to grow. If you're trying to invest into a company when it's already reached a peak, then it's much more difficult to yield the types of returns that you might be wanting. Now, it's not to say that you don't want to invest in stable companies that have a proven track record, like an Apple, like an Amazon, even like Tesla at this present moment, but you're probably not going to see the same types of returns that you might be hoping to if you're looking to make a higher yield in a shorter period of time. So in that sense, let's take a couple of steps and look at what we can do to identify stocks that might actually produce that type of return. The first step you want to take when trying to identify which companies might be successful is to begin looking backwards. Try and think to yourself, who were the people who were investing into Amazon and Apple back in the 90s or early 2000s, and what was triggering them to actually do this? What were the fundamentals of the economy? What was happening in technology that caused people to think, you know what, these companies might be successful years down the road? Because right now it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, the internet is going to change things, or technology is going to advance, or smartphones are going to make a difference in life. But back then, that was not common wisdom or common knowledge, and some of those products hadn't even been developed yet. So what is it that people are doing in that present moment that is thinking them to actually invest into those companies? And then we can apply some of those same principles and those kinds of thoughts in how we'd want to invest right here, right now. For example, if you consider Amazon, back in 1995, Amazon was receiving about 2,200 daily visitors to their website. But 2 years later, they were having almost 80,000 people visiting their site on a daily basis. That was over a 3,600% increase in how much traffic was going to their website. So that was an indication or a trend line that that company was actually beginning to develop a bit of a following and people were gravitating towards it. And during the course of that time, Amazon went from being worth about $511,000 all the way up to being worth $15 million. So we saw the stock growing, or seeing that company grow and its capitalization grow as well. And as Amazon continued to grow, it wasn't until it reached the value of $434 million that it actually went public. And now today, if you consider the contrast, back when it went public at $434 million, now it's worth $1.6 trillion for as far as its capitalization. And you might ask yourself, what was causing Amazon to grow? Because back in the day, you might consider what Amazon was actually selling. Amazon was actually selling books. They weren't selling the normal products that they have right now that all of us purchase on Prime, but they were just selling books because that was one of the easiest products to package and ship. So it was more of an efficiency component, and people were beginning to gravitate towards that. But you could see then they also started to pivot away from physical products like books and actually going to digital books. They actually had their Amazon Kindle and began developing some more technology. So always kind of moving things forward, understanding that they're a little bit ahead of the curve. And if you think about it, at the time that Amazon was growing, the internet was just starting to get going as well. The average amount of people who were actually using the internet was close to 16 million in the year of 1995. But then if you fast forward all the way to 1999, it increased to almost 248 million users. So during that time, people are then gravitating towards websites like Amazon. And as we're seeing today, people are purchasing products for almost every daily need through that same website that began back in the 90s, and they were just selling books at that time. So if you had all of that information and understanding back in the 90s, you would think it's a no-brainer to then invest into Amazon. But it requires you to not just think of this from hindsight, but understanding there were some fundamentals happening in the economy and how you could potentially forecast that into the future instead of just jumping on the bandwagon once the company is successful. Because it's very easy to say that Amazon is successful right now. That's because we're seeing it right before our eyes. But if you want to have those eye-popping returns that might have actually changed your life by investing earlier on in the stage, you might have actually need to consider various components of this and actually theoretically think through what would be best for you. And on that note specifically, I think it's also important for us to understand that it took time for Amazon to grow. It wasn't just overnight. You'll see that we're looking at the 1990s and here we are in 2021. So we've got ourselves a significant amount of time that it took for Amazon to reach where it is today. Alright, so after you look backwards and try to understand the fundamentals that changed companies back in the day, try and think through how can you identify under the radar companies right now? Because there was a point in time when Amazon was an under the radar company, similarly with Apple. But right now, how do we identify under the radar companies? And there's a basic metric that you and I can apply to this when we're actually investing and investigating what kind of opportunities we want to put our money into. And one thing I would consider is if you want to get a company that is worth less than $10 billion, I would consider that to be under the radar because there is the opportunity and potential for there to be a higher upside where a company could double, triple, or even quadruple, but it's going to take time. But if you're investing at an earlier stage when the company hasn't reached such a large capitalization rate, then you have a much likelier chance for this company to actually produce the types of returns that could be significant. So how do you identify these under the radar companies? One of the benefits of the stock market here in the United States is that it is a public entity in the sense that we have public access to the information that shows how much companies are worth, what their trend lines are, and all of the various data points that we can look at if we're considering investing into individual stocks. And I think on that note, this is an important point I really want to stipulate, is that if you're considering investing in individual stocks, obviously it requires more research, understanding, and a bit more of a risk associated with it in comparison to just investing in, say, index funds. But if you're considering wanting to do this, you want to be more detailed and analytical in how you approach it. So what you can do is you can go on websites, you could even just go on Google, type in the ticker number of different companies and actually find their symbol, and then you can see the information right there about what the company has been doing and even the trend lines of where their investment has been prior and where it is today. You want to look at a couple of factors when you look at a company. Let's say if you identify any company out in society, you might go and you want to look at their growth rate, you want to look at their recent price of their stock, you also want to look at their revenue growth, you also want to consider other factors about how much debt they have and things that could actually configure how much the company might be worth and what kind of obstacles they might face in the future. And you can identify some of these companies by maybe seeing what people are talking about, not just on major headlines that you're going to see on CNBC or anything like that, but if you actually browse and peruse through different comments on different blogs, you might be able to see different people starting to talk about companies that might be there. One group I like to use when it comes to trying to identify some of these companies is called the Motley Fool. I'm not associated or affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form, but I find their assessments to be pretty robust. And specifically, as we saw previously with the internet becoming so significant and having an impact on all these companies that I just referred to, you can see now a trend line that's happening right now is 5G. And the 5G distribution and how that's going to actually be implemented in our economy will have significant impacts. And the Motley Fool actually showcases different companies that are a bit under the radar right now, which will actually benefit from the deployment of 5G technology. Now, I'm not telling you to invest in any of those companies or do anything like that, just giving you an indication of how you can use public knowledge and information that is out there and hopefully take that, assess that, and actually implement that for potentially investing into opportunities that have the ability to yield returns that you're looking for. So let's say you've identified a few companies that you believe are under the radar. The next step you want to take is to really dive into the numbers and do an analysis of where that company stands right now. And a couple of things that you're going to want to look at is how much revenue growth really is happening in the company. Because oftentimes under the radar companies that are maybe more in the startup phase are not going to generally have too much profit going on. For example, Amazon was operating at a loss for many years before it became profitable, and even Tesla only recently became profitable. But what you want to look at is the revenue growth. If you're seeing a company continue to grow and have that type of trend line where it's going on an annual basis, that is a good indication that this company is actually moving forward positively, because hopefully they'll be able to come out of any debt or any sort of issue they're working through, and then that trend line will continue once they're in the profitability stage. You might be asking yourself, well, what type of revenue growth should I be looking for? And I would say a safe number to look at, if a company is growing at 20% per year with revenue growth, that might be a good indication that you might have a winner. If a company, let's say, is under the radar, it's worth less than $10 billion, but it has a revenue growth of 20% every single year, that's a good indication that company is heading in a proper direction. Now that we have a better understanding of how to strategically select stocks that could potentially produce the type of returns you're seeking, what I want to do is share my larger investment strategy that I employ for the majority of my investments, and that would be investing into index funds. And one of the things you're going to find is that index funds are very passive. They're not the type of fund where you're going to have to go in and identify a company, look at the fundamentals, and then try and do your best assessment and put the most money into it. With an index fund, what you're generally doing is tracking the S&P 500 or a majority of companies, how they're producing over time. And if you look historically, on average, you're going to find the return that actually is from the S&P 500 recently has been about 9.5%. But even individuals who invest into index funds only are receiving about a 5% annual return, and that is because of human behavior. One of the downsides associated with picking individual stocks or even spending time where you're assessing actively an index fund is that if you're actively doing something in the stock market where you're selecting the investments and you're assessing them on a daily basis, our human behavior and our emotion can actually get in the way, where then we, instead of buying low and selling high, we do the exact opposite. We buy a stock when it's high and then we sell it when it's low. And this applies not just to individual companies, but it also applies to index funds. So my encouragement to you is, as you're moving forward and looking at investing, I personally like to invest the majority of my portfolio into index funds, because that is a safe, stable return long term. And if you have a few individual stocks, I think that's cool. But if you invest into individual stocks, you'll find yourself being a bit more emotionally gravitating towards the ebb and flow of what the stock market is doing. Imagine if you had invested, like I said before, into GameStop and saw your stock go up super high and then immediately crash down. You'd be so tempted to sell right now and potentially lose all of your money. Now, the likelihood of the stock going up to where it was astronomical levels is probably not going to happen again, but still, you're in an area right now where you're only going to get hurt if you sell the stocks and lose all the money. Dave Ramsey has a saying. He says, the only people who get hurt on a roller coaster are those who get off in the middle of the ride. And the same applies for any investment that you take. So you want to make sure that if you're going to go ahead and you have a long-term strategy for your investment, you want to see it through. You might be asking yourself, Zach, what is the best approach I can take to maximize returns and have a long-term approach when it comes to my investment strategy? And I would say it's to pick the like button for the YouTube algorithm. I'm just kidding, but if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like button. It would actually help the channel out a lot. Now, when it comes to actually investing into the stock market, like I said before, I like to use index fund investing as my primary strategy. But then taking it one step further, I like doing so in as much of a systematic approach as possible, where it's a bit mechanical, it's a bit automated, and generally it's passive, so I'm not actively looking at it all the time and getting freaked out when the stocks go high or low. So I actually use it in a company called Wealthfront. It's a robo-advisor where basically I invest into index funds. It's a broad base of index funds that are based off of my risk tolerance. So I answer all these questions before I set up my account. It determines how much risk tolerance I have, and then it adjusts my portfolio accordingly. So that's something that's good for you to do. So if you want to even be a bit riskier, you can up your risk tolerance by answering the questions accurately. But if you cannot stomach it, then you want to make sure you answer those questions correctly as well, so that way you're not tempted to sell your stocks when they're at their lowest point. In addition, you want to have what's called tax loss harvesting, and that basically rebalances your portfolio, so that way if you have losses, that can benefit you in a tax perspective, and Wealthfront does that automatically. Another thing you want to consider is doing dollar cost averaging. And dollar cost averaging is basically where you continuously put money into the market. And this is a really easy approach that you can take. And once you have it automated, where you have money coming out of your checking account or your savings account and then going into your investment account through a company like Wealthfront, or if you want to do something with Fidelity or any other brokerages that exist out there, Betterment, I'm not specifically telling you what you need to use, but if you do want to use Wealthfront, I do have a link in the description for you to check it out, and you can try that out yourself. And I believe you get like $500 extra for doing so. That's managed for free by Wealthfront if you do that. But when you think about it this way, if you have an automatic approach where you're not even thinking about it, you're not going to be tempted to withdraw or withhold your money from your investment if it's automatically being invested. And if you're investing on a continuous basis by dollar cost averaging, you're going to invest when stocks are high and when they're low, so it's going to average out over time. Now, if you do more of what's called like lump sum investing, where you invest it all at once, that has a higher potential for a higher reward, but it's much riskier because then you're potentially not going to do so at the right time. So I employ the dollar cost averaging technique, and that's why I like Wealthfront so much. So it's just a good way for you to go about doing it. And like I said, whatever company you use is totally fine for me. I just want to encourage you that the more automated and systematic you can make it, the more you can withdraw your emotions and not get as scared and do things that are actually going to strategically produce long-term results. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you for watching the video today. If you wouldn't mind, please like the video. That would really help the channel out for the YouTube algorithm, help push this video to other people who might need to hear it. Furthermore, if you wouldn't mind, please comment down below. I'd love to interact with you and hear from you and do any research on your behalf. And also if you have any disagreements with me or if you have other insight you want to share. Like I said, I do not have the answer to everything, but I'll do my best to always produce information that is as accurate as I possibly can provide, and also stuff I just want to share with you, any encouragement as well, because I know you can get discouraged sometimes when investing, but also other things of life as well. And I just want to be a friend to you and try and encourage you as much as I can. Furthermore, if you wouldn't mind, please subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to myself personally, as I want to do everything I can to encourage you and myself to lead lives of meaning and purpose, all while maintaining balance and moderation by producing positive content that hopefully makes a positive impact in your life. And if you wouldn't mind, if you do subscribe to the channel, please tap the notification bell. That will notify you every time I post a video, which I do on a weekly basis. Once again, I'd like to thank you for watching the video today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you next time.